Welcome to Drop the Mic, broadcasting from The Lounge, also known as the Cigar Affair in downtown Maumee, Ohio. I'm Mike, your host. Thanks for joining us for insightful conversations about business, technology, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Alongside my co-hosts Brendan and Zach, together we'll dive into the latest trends, share valuable insights, and interview inspiring guests. Now, get ready for Drop the Mic. Welcome to Drop the Mic. We're here in The Lounge. So I'm here with my co-hosts today, Brendan and Zach. Brendan's on the board, making sure everything looks good and sounds good. Brendan, I hear you got an excellent show lined up for us today.
Absolutely. Super excited about this one and ready for it to take off. Got a good friend here and love to hear a story.
So what's the topic?
We're going to shoot into gig economy.
Ooh, gig economy. That's interesting, especially since, COVID kind of exploded that, right? I mean, it's been around for a while, but hey, so also here with Zach. Zach, for our listeners out there that may not quite understand what the gig economy is, run that down for us.
Yeah, sure. So the gig economy, I guess you could probably define as folks building a career off of 1099 contractual work, most commonly through apps or platforms like Uber, Fiverr, DoorDash. Mm-hmm. These are folks that are choosing that as a career path instead of the traditional corporate world.
So more like freelance.
Yeah, freelance contractual work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. So, I'm the old guy in the group, right? Even our guest today, he's a young guy.
Yeah. We're not gonna ask your age.
Yeah. We're not gonna put him on the spot and ask his age, but I look at the gig economy and it really, we've all dabbled in it a little bit, right? Yeah. But I have a corporate job. I know you have a corporate job. Brendan has a corporate job, right? And that corporate job comes with things like health benefits,
yep.
paid vacation, right? All the security, right?
Yeah.
Vehicles, right?
Right. Company vehicles. Yeah, you got it. So I just took a look, knowing that we were going to be talking about this today. I just took a look at a couple of statistics. So this year, the freelance economy or the gig economy is going to be at about $76.4 million of the U.S. economy. Yeah, right? It says 36% of people actively participate, in freelance, right? To me, that scares the hell out of me. We got a whole lot of this economy that's kind of unregulated, right? So another stat I saw as I was looking was of that 36%, 14%, of all of the gig economy workers, 14% make less than minimum wage.
Wow.
Right? That's 1 of 7, right? So of all the people that are participating, 1 of 7 make less than minimum wage. And understand in 2023, this was a $204 billion economy globally. $204 billion. They're saying it's going to double, in the next 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really, to me, I'm on the fence whether this is a good thing or a bad thing,
Yeah.
So change my mind.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting to think about. Like, are we seeing the corporate world or the corporate career path deteriorate, or are we seeing people who are entering the workforce just choosing this for the flexibility, other perceived benefits around that kind of employment?
Yeah. Is this a referendum against, big corporations?
Or maybe it's just short-sightedness on people who are entering this. Maybe they got laid off and now they're driving for Uber or DoorDash or something like that.
I can speak from experience.
Yeah.
When I got laid off during the COVID months, I was doing DoorDash, and honestly, it was bringing in a substantial amount of income.
Yeah.
Make $250 a day, driving around, have your AirPods in your ears, listen to music.
Yeah.
Picking up food, dropping off for people's houses. Honestly,
yeah,
a bad gig.
Better than unemployment, right? But
exactly.
But as a freelancer, aren't you kind of subject to those up and downs and but there's no there's no backdrop for you. There's no safety net.
Right.
Because if your clientele base or the market changes or technology changes, right, and you're all of a sudden your freelance work goes away, you're not even in the unemployment system anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a certain segment of the freelance population, I think the biggest risk is that they're not developing their skills as they grow in their career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the traditional career path comes. If you start at the ground, you can work up to manager, build a team under you, you gain experience. The company has confidence in your ability to manage and drive results. And if you're just doing one task, delivering groceries or just driving a car for Uber, you're not necessarily getting that type of career path or you growing your career and education in that way. Sure, necessarily.
Yeah.
That's kind of a risk.
But at the same token, I mean, I do see the benefits, right? I mean, people that, have a skill, have, even like in, if you look at the gig economy, I think, Uber and DoorDash, and those are fairly small portion. I mean, there's companies out there that, big corporations that are now starting to treat people as gig employees, right?
Yeah.
And they're basing their whole business model on that. So, I mean, I guess with everything, there's an evolution, yeah, for me, it's a good thing that we can go out and we can make some extra money and maybe supplement an income. But man, when I think it's time for me to bring in our guest. So, but when I think about our guest today is Luke Tull. Luke, when I think about your story, which you're going to tell us, it gives me a pit in my stomach because I'm a security guy. I'm a corporate guy, right? I like to know that if I need to go to the hospital today, that, I've got, a healthcare card from my company that I can go in and get paid. So, Luke, welcome to the show. Tell us about yourself. Tell us your story. Let's get right into, where you were in the corporate world and how you transitioned out of that.
Sure. Thanks for having me out, by the way. Appreciate it, everybody. Appreciate the invite. So my name is Luke Tull, as you said, and basically I was in corporate America for the past 10, 12 years, something like this.
Big corporate America.
Yeah, like we're talking about Ernst & Young, Deloitte, General Motors, Owens, Illinois, which is right down the street from here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like in the thick of it, and I was a manager, like a mid-level manager by the time I left. And basically, but it was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I actually was we were in a tough financial situation is really what happened. And I was the one that put us in that, taking a bunch of risks that I shouldn't be, taking out a bunch of loans that I shouldn't be. So it's kind of funny. I got into the gig economy out of requirement, out of like necessity, right? I didn't get into it for fun, just because I thought it was cool. Now it turned into that eventually, right? But I first got into it because I was like, hey, we need to bring in like an extra $2,000, $3,000 a month. And at the time, that was like no joke for us, right? That was like a pretty big amount of a change to bring in. So I got involved by basically working early hours before work because I used to have to drive up to Detroit every single day.
Okay.
This is about when I started working for Ernst & Young and then eventually General Motors. I was working early hours and late nights like that. It felt like all I was doing was working, basically. And that's how I actually got involved in the gig economy. And it actually spurred off of me in getting interested in drop shipping. So y'all know what drop shipping is, but basically it's selling something you don't have in inventory and then having a supplier, whether it be in China or the US, actually send it to your customer direct.
So is that kind of like an Amazon store or an eBay store type thing?
It's almost even further from that because I don't even buy any inventory. I only buy the inventory or one unit until I sell it. So unless someone buys something, I literally purchase nothing, right? All I'm doing is advertising, basically. That's all I'm purchasing at that moment.
Okay.
So
how did you learn how to do that? I mean, where did this idea come up in your head?
It wasn't mine. It wasn't my idea, to be fair. It was a bunch of YouTubers talking about how popular this was. This was like 6-7 years ago when things were a lot more lucrative, I think, from a job shipping standpoint. And it was a very hot topic. So that's how I actually got involved as far as like entrepreneurship, just trying to make my own dime. I tried that. I failed. Let's see. I worked on Google Ads and Facebook reviews. Like basically, they'd hit you with a piece of content. You'd have to review it and say, like, this is good, this is relevant, or no, I hate this and it's terrible. So that's how I got started in the entrepreneurship realm.
And they were paying you to give those reviews?
Yeah. The problem with that job was that it was under the gun, basically. You had to go as fast as you could because it was like 90 cents ad or something like that. Yes. So like, but you had to be super accurate and they checked your work. And so it was one of the most like stressful jobs I think I've ever had in my life, just because you felt like you were racing against the clock, because it's like, hey, if I don't get this done in like 2 minutes, my hourly rate is tanking, basically.
So how many of those would you do a day?
Let's see. I was trying to work like 2-3 hours a day and barely making ends meet. Cause you imagine maybe I'm making $15-20 and that's what, 90 hours a month or something like this. I'm not really, it's close. It's very edgy on the 2K, 3K mark, which is my goal. Right. But I also realized like I was in a rat race and I don't have enough energy to put like my time into something like that.
And just to be clear, you were still working your job at this point, right? Yeah. So you're still working full time, throwing 90 hours on top, trying to scratch out a couple $1,000 a month.
Correct. And again, it's just the financial situation I was in. And then it dawned on me one day that like, one, I can't do this anymore. And two, complication, I was in Canada and Facebook didn't really like this. So, and I wasn't even working directly for Facebook. It was some like third party company that Facebook hired to do quality analysis. They were even like subcontracting me. So it was like a very entangled sort of like situation. They were probably charging Facebook $50 an hour, you know?
Subcontractor of the subcontractor.
Yeah, exactly. So no wonder I was not really making
That's why they call it money. Right?
Yeah, no wonder I wasn't making a ton of money at the time. So anyway, I realized, like, again, this is kind of the rat race you're talking about, which is like, crap, I'm not really making a ton of money. I'm having to rush against the clock. I'm having to deliver these groceries or these items to these people's houses, and it's a race against the clock every single day. So when I realized, I'm like, that's really not going to work. Like, I got to be able to work the hours I can work, and it needs to be more rewarding than $15-20. And not only that, like when I'm doing that, I don't want to feel like I'm really trying to race against the clock. So then I realized through the dropshipping experience, I'm like, wait a second, I know how to do things technically. I know how to set up all these things. I did like 10 stores or something crazy. So I basically realized that I have a skill that many other people don't have, which is building websites basically and doing like technical things, doing these like integrations with these drop shippers and whatnot. And then I was like, you know what? I bet I could sell that somewhere. And so I discovered a platform. It's called Upwork. And that's still where we work today, by the way. But basically, I started off taking any job possible. Like, again, I started myself at like $15-20 an hour, nothing crazy or anything like that. And basically was working like, I would consider that like not very high pay, right? But the value I was adding was like more significant than my pay. So basically I knew at the time, I'm like, hey, I just need to get some jobs. Like I just need to get some things under my belt. Yeah, because the thing is, like, if you go to someone's profile, they have 0 reviews. It's like showing up on a website. They have no reviews. You're probably not going to buy anything, right?
Right.
So basically, I understood that concept because I knew dropshipping and how the social proof game worked and things of that nature, and how like purchasing worked on the internet. So anyway, I did that for 2-3 years probably. But what I ended up doing is I got a little smart. And maybe I'm just kind of smart in general, but I got quite smart because I basically started to realize the demand started to increase. So I started getting a lot of inquiries. Eventually, after I built up 3 or 4 or 5 jobs, it's a very hot platform. It's called Shopify. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It's an e-commerce platform, and a lot of people operate, a lot of e-commerce companies operate off of that platform. So basically, anytime I got super busy, I just started doubling my rate and just saying, hey, instead of $25 an hour, it's going to be 50. And just seeing if I could get away with it because I didn't need the work, right? I already had like at least 2-3 clients, like had some work to get us over the finish line each month. So I basically said, let me just see if they pay $50. And then if I got busy again, I just kept like going up the ladder, right? Until eventually this was, I think it was like 2021 or 2022. I was charging like $250 an hour, which is just like ridiculous. It just seems crazy to me to even say that number.
Yeah.
For web development services, like what you would think is like, hey, like I could hire anybody for like $30 an hour and do that. But I realized that like it's all about positioning. It's all about how you pitch, and it's all about how you communicate with like those potential prospects.
Yep.
So anyway, that's kind of the long. Like honestly, that's a long story short. Even though that was very very verbose, but that's how I got into the gig industry out of necessity, and basically just grew that business, not even realizing what I was doing. But then I realized, hey, I have this profile. I have all these high paying clients. I have pretty good consistency. We constantly get invites to jobs and projects. I'm like, hey, this is working pretty well, actually.
So let's talk about that day. The day that you decided that this was going to be your full-time career path. The day that, you decided that General Motors was no longer going to be an option for you. What went into that decision? How did that transition happen for you? Because you have a family, correct?
4 kids and a wife, yes.
Oh, wow. Right?
4 kids, under 10 and under.
So you're the breadwinner, I take it, and you've got all of this responsibility. You got 5 mouths to feed, beside your own.
Really 6, yeah.
Yeah, beside your own, right? Yes. And now all of a sudden you look at this and go, okay, I don't just need an extra $2,000 a month. What I need to do is this full time. Yeah. How did that happen? This had to be tough. Right?
Oh, it was super hard.
Okay.
If I was thinking with only my brain, I would have never left General Motors, because the math doesn't really, security comes away, right? I had a car, I had bonuses, I had a high paying salary and very consistent. I could do the job well. I never had any problems at the job.
Get a trajectory you could kind of follow.
Yeah, and I could be mid-level manager probably for the longest time there because I had a very specific role. I had a very specific function with a specific expertise. Okay. I could have been middle manager for another 20 years if I wanted to.
Yeah. So your career was going well.
Yes, it was. Correct. So, but so what ended up happening is General Motors was last year around this time now, actually, I think about it. Basically had told all their salary employees that had worked with the company 5 or more years. They were saying, anybody that's worked with the company 5 or more years, we'll give you a month of pay for a year of service and a prorated bonus and a little bit of extra money for healthcare. So, when I heard that, it's funny, I kind of knew already that I should do it. I should leave. And again, I wasn't really thinking very much about this, right? But then as I started to think about it, I started to get more and more scared about leaving, right? And so that kind of turned into an interesting situation at home, I will say, just because it's hey, you're going to leave your job, but it doesn't really feel like you have a plan. You have an idea where this is going. You don't seem too confident, which makes sense, right? Of course, that doesn't make any sense and you don't really have a plan. So what are you doing, Luke? But basically, there was just something in me that I realized that, you know what, I'm not growing as much as I want to. I'm sitting at my day job and I am managing people. I'm going to meetings. Yep. The thing is, this is rinse on repeat for me. It's not a problem, right? Mm-hmm. There's no sort of pull. There's some little pushes and pulls here and there that are helping me grow, but it's not very significant. It's a little slow for me.
You were bored.
Yes. I get bored very easily. It's part of my problem too. So basically I was if I'm really going to make this jump, and I always had this little voice in me telling me, hey, start your own company. And I just ignored it for years and years. This was even in college. I heard this. So I said to myself, you know what, if I'm ever going to do the entrepreneurship thing, this is probably the only time. I'm about to be 35 years old, or I think I was 35 at the time actually. And there's no other time. And there's no other way this is going to work, because I know if I don't, I'm going to be golden handcuffed for sure. No doubt about it. So basically it was more in my heart and less in my brain as far as making that decision. And then basically I had a friend of mine. He's now a mentor, I suppose. Now he's more of a friend, but he kind of walked me through. He's like, Luke, what do you really want to do? And I'm like, I kind of want to leave. He's like, just do it. He is more gung-ho than I was about it. And funny thing is,
easy for you to say.
Yeah, this guy is single and is quite successful, right? Doesn't have all these mouths to feed and everything else. But I think I needed someone to kind of push me a little bit. I was probably going to do it regardless, but he kind of finally made me say, like, send that email, tell HR, hey, you're gone, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. And I did not have a good plan. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have anything except a profile at Upwork and some potential clients and a couple of consistent ones.
So you hadn't even formed an LLC. You're a straight freelance 1099 contractor.
I had an LLC built already. Actually, when I first started like the drop shipping stuff and everything else like that, I don't know how I knew this. I'm kind of like, hey, I just need an LLC to run things through a business, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that LLC was ever really used. It was always considered like sole proprietorship. The LLC was never really like doing tax filings or anything like that.
Right.
So really at the time, when I left General Motors, we actually had done, I think, a couple of filings at that point because the business had gotten big enough to where I had another business too that was underneath it. Gets kind of complicated. That was a drop shipping business.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had an LLC at the very least. I had a bank account with the company name on it, that sort of thing. So I at least had some semblance of a company, right?
Foundation.
Yes. From a tax standpoint, I suppose. But yeah, anyway.
So what was it in your heart that was pulling you away from the stability of General Motors at that time? Like for those who don't have an entrepreneurial bent necessarily, like how would you explain that internal motivation to go out on your own?
I think it comes down to, we only live once on this earth, really. And like, am I going to go all out and do everything I can that's in my power to like be the very best and achieve my highest potential? Or am I going to kind of just play it safe and maybe not achieve everything I wanted to? Now, I will say entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And you should just be an entrepreneur because somebody else is. Of
course.
But for me personally, I was like, because some people, they could be a manager. That growth is enough. Mm-hmm. That's sufficient. Totally fine. I'm not judging anybody on that.
Yep.
But for me personally, I just had this something underneath just telling me, this is just not enough. This is not going to be enough for you. Like, I'm not going to be fulfilled enough just sitting in this job. And I think that's what it really came down to, is that like me personally realizing that this is not going to be, it's not going to like fill my cup at the end of the day. And I'm probably going to be sad in about 5 years when I didn't take this and I didn't leave and I didn't at least give this a go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that right there, I think, is probably the biggest fear that most of us have, right? Is the regret of not doing it, right? When you see it in your head, man.
Is the grass really greener on the other side, right? Is it easier? Is it better? And I know we've had many conversations, Luke, where it's like entrepreneurship looks like it's so easy. It sounds so easy. When you get in the grit of it, it's challenging, right? It's long hours, long night, weekend work.
Okay, so let's dive into that one because there's a lot to unpack there, Brendan, and I love that question. So day one, you just walked away. You had a little bit of a safety net with a buyout, kind of good timing, right? For you. But day one, what's in your head at that point? Like, I just have to do more of the stuff that I was doing, on the side before that.
Yeah, I just had to go more all out on that. Like, I even told my biggest client at the time, I'm like, hey, I'm be living the job. No, like, I tried to tell them basically no pressure here, but if you want to give, like, I can give you some more hours, basically. So what ended up happening, the good news is, like, I think even before day one, I was already working out a deal with them as far as like being their CTO, like kind of a stand-in CTO. And basically they had hired me on, again, it's not really full-time. The thing is, nothing in the gig economy is really like full-time or guaranteed, by the way.
Right.
It is very project-oriented. It is very loose. It is very like, day by day sort of thing. A company can wake up and just say, hey, we don't really need you anymore. This happens all the time.
I like the term project-oriented.
Yes. If they have like a target in mind and you're getting hired for that, like typically the project ends, and then after that, just maybe you get like a little bit of extra revenue and you like supplement for like $2,000 a month or something, which by the way is not even close to sufficient enough to meet the company needs and everything else. So yeah, like day one, I walked out of there. I got kind of lucky in a way because that client did decide, hey, we can bring you on a little bit more full time. They actually gave me 40 hours a week.
Well, that's fortunate. Yeah,
it was very fortunate. And like, I don't think I realized how good that was, by the way. Like, I think I was like, oh, this is great. But I was still pushing the envelope. I'm like, 40 hours is great, but we need to do more. I'm like, we got to do more. And it's almost like, again, that thing in the back of my head. I'm like, this is probably not going to last forever. And again, I wasn't really consciously thinking. I was just like, let's just keep pushing this, right? Like I'm going to keep pushing the ball down the court. I dribbled a few times, but let's keep dribbling towards the basket, right? So that's what ended up happening. I did have that realization that yes, I need to do more, but I also was able to fortunately sign on with that client of mine it lasted like 3 or 4 months or something like this.
So I hear a rumor from Brendan that you weren't the only one in your household that did this.
Oh, yes, this is true. Yes. My wife actually is going to tell you that she's a bit more smarter than I am, because she actually took the leap. Was that like 6 to 8 months before I did? So,
wow.
Hey, funny story, by the way, about that is there's another thing that happened with my wife and I when I think we were still dating at the time. She bought a white Jetta, and then go figure, like 6 months later, what did I do? I bought a black Jetta. So anyway, you got to see a theme here. Yeah, my wife likes to say that, like, hey, like that wasn't really like your idea necessarily, like that. You're just kind of like living through me a little bit. I'm like, yeah, kind of.
So did she quit to just stay at home, or did she quit to follow like her entrepreneurial dreams as well?
I mean, she had a bit of both. Like one of them is we're going to have 4 kids, and like it's going to be chaos. It's going to be insane. Like at least one of them's going to be sick or have holiday or something like this. So she left for the family, but she also wanted to do some of her own thing as well. Like there was definitely that entrepreneurship drive with her as well.
But you still needed to carry the water, right? You needed to carry the water.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I still need to carry a majority of the weight. She definitely supplements our income. Even to this day, she does as well, right? Like, she's incredible. I married up, by the way. But she's like insane, like she does the work and she helps, like she does a lot of the house stuff and kids, and she's awesome, right?
Brendan will tell you the second that you said that so she can go listen to that.
I'm sure he will.
But like me, I have a wife who works, she's very successful. She's in the corporate world. So for me, there's no stress. If I wanted to go do something, right, she makes enough money, we'd be okay. But I'm still just hung up on the fact that you did this. And then on top of it, oh, by the way, right, we don't have another like 40-hour income, in the family. So
yeah, now I will say, like to Brendan's point, like it definitely has been tricky, right? Like I made a ton of mistakes in the business that affected us personally. Like there were times where I'm like, I hope we clear payroll this month. I'm not even joking about this. Like I hope we can pay ourselves.
Okay, so payroll was just you at the time, right? No other employees or anything like that.
I ended up hiring an assistant initially, and she's been with us ever since. Actually, like she's a rock star. So we did have an additional payroll, but really the primary payroll is me for the moment.
Yeah.
So like our bill is like massive basically when it comes to payroll, because again, I had a high salary job, bonus. We're all used to this.
Should you supplement?
Yeah. We kind of want to still meet that goal, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, but basically, yeah, once I lost that 40-hour guarantee, that's when things got dicey. Bad things happened. Clients ended up taking longer to finish a project. We were collecting money in a weird way. We basically broke our cash flow. I mean, more or less what we did as a company is that we basically put all of our eggs into the client getting back to us and basically saying, oh yeah, the project's over now. Because the thing is, any project you take on, there also is a client involvement of some sort. They have to do something. They need to get back to you. They need to give you feedback. So basically there were some tricky times. This is very recent. I mean, entrepreneurship is so fast. This is like 6-8 weeks ago. Like this is the past like 3 payroll periods. So it's scary. Like it scares you to death, basically. And sometimes just doing more is like not sufficient. You have to do things different. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship and Brendan and I have talked about this before, is that like it's adjusting, it's adapting. And you just hope that you don't make too many mistakes to where you can't actually pay, your employees and pay yourself. Right. We've been fortunate enough to like, we've kind of worked things out. We've kind of figured things out. And I also have more of a CFO in the company. He's really like a budget guy. He's a finance guy. That's just not me. I'm a tech guy. I'm a nerd. I just like to like have fun in the code land. I don't like to do the numbers too much. I definitely started playing more CFO, but yeah, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like bad things happen. Clients cancel their payment. Like literally had a client that called up and said it was fraud. Like these bad things happen. You hear these horror stories. They do happen. the problem is now it's a direct correlation or direct impact on your family, right? It's not just like, oh, the company lost $5,000, bummer. No. Like, company lost $5,000, but we really needed that $5,000.
Right.
So,
well, $5,000 came out of your pocket.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's the big difference.
That's the nature of the game. So like when you're talking about risk and things of that nature, there's definitely a lot more involved. And I think Zach, you were saying it best, is like, it is project oriented work. And that does come with, there are some like ebbs and flows as well, right? Like there's not a project every single day that someone wants to redesign their website, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Those are big projects for us, but they don't happen maybe once every other month or something like this. So like we kind of have these weird income or revenue flows where it's like we go up and then we kind of teeter down. Then we go up again and kind of teeter down. So anyway, that's the dark side.
And so my past, I mean, a lot of, these guys know, but I had owned a business for 20 years before, losing that business and then going into the corporate world. So I understand that, the ebbs and flows are all part of the small business culture, right? I mean, if you just have to sock it away when things are good and, hope you can withstand the low points, when the roller coaster, hits bottom.
So it's hard to sock it away when you feel like, because when you're on that high, right? You're like,
you're the king of the world.
Great. This is amazing.
Yeah.
This is the best company.
It's always going to be that way, right? You feel, I've made it, whatever. I know, Brendan and I have talked many times where Brendan's like, hey, why don't we just why don't we just do this? And I'm like, no, I'm more of the money shows up in the account every couple weeks and, I get to, play with somebody else's money and, do all that stuff. So I know you said that you made some mistakes. What are some of the things that you wished you would have maybe learned before you took this leap? What are, some of the things that maybe you could have prepared yourself a little bit better for, knowing where you were going to end up?
Yeah.
Back when you were still making money from somebody else.
Yeah, I think underestimating two different things. Like one is lead flow. So that's basically, just real quick lesson on lead flow. That's basically people coming to your business asking for service, right? Like the thing is, if you don't have that figured out or it's very inconsistent, then your business is going to be very inconsistent. And this is kind of the issue with some of the gig platforms is, again, it's like random, right? It's like all of a sudden, maybe one week I have 7 invites, the next week I have 0. So I think underestimating the idea that we need consistent leads coming in the door.
And so that client acquisition side, right? So how do you manage that? What's your kind of your strategy behind that? Or are you still trying to figure that out?
Well, the thing is, I have a lot of experience with this now. So like we're figuring it out, basically. I mean, for the most part, of course, we always are trying to improve. Hey, how can we get more leads? This is the question I'm kind of asking myself every single day. And our company is weird because it's a very niche service. So it's not like something I can just go on Facebook and just be like, hey, come get your website done. Like that's not really our jam. We have a very specific niche, and that's Shopify. Not only that, it's even more specific than that. It's usually companies doing at least 7 figures and beyond because their needs a little bit more specific. They're a little bit more dynamic. They can't just hire someone off the street to do their website.
Right.
So,
are your customers mainly doing drop shipping through Shopify?
That's the thing. I don't think we work with a single drop shipper. And this for a reason for that. Drop shippers are typically a bit capped, right? Until they create like a real company out of it. You're typically capped 6, maybe 7 figures. But even then, your profitability is not the best because, you're selling someone else's stuff.
Yeah, there's margin compression in that space over the past 5 years. More people have heard about it and gotten into it.
You're absolutely correct about that. It's very, very competitive, especially if it's like a hot product. You'll see the same product from like 3 different companies. This happens on my feed at least, probably because I drop ship a bit. But yes, that definitely, we don't work with any drop shippers. But anyway, back to like the client acquisition side. What I realized like a few different things. One, I always try to get people on the phone all the time. Every single time we were trying to get someone on the phone, because if I get them on the phone, I can show up, we can kind of show off our expertise a bit, and we can actually like show them what we do. It's a little bit more of a personal connection. If I just do text and they just say like how much, I'm like, I don't even know what you need yet, right? They're like, I need a website. Tell me how much. I'm like, I don't know. What are you trying to do? Like,
you can give them the wow factor.
Yes, because I feel like we've kind of lost that in the economy too, in general, I would say, in the world in general, is like the person, right? It's like, it's more about the person that you're in front of than it is about like oh, it's 5,000. Well, this other guy can do it for 2,500.
Yeah. Like you don't want your customers looking at you like a commodity.
Yeah.
Shopping you against other people that don't have your expertise, but you're not communicating the value, or at least they're not seeing that value.
The thing is, that's the differentiator for our business is like, if I get in front of somebody and another developer gets in front of somebody, like I feel like it's a night and day difference because I can kind of, since I have an entrepreneurship, I've done the drop shipping stuff, I kind of understand more the X's and O's of a business and I can kind of speak to those. Yeah, whereas like a regular developer is like, oh, just tell me what to do and I'll be a robot and just like execute, right? It's like, that doesn't really help these smaller businesses or medium-sized businesses.
So the question that I have is, when, back in the day, would you ever have thought that you would be into solution sales?